It was a frosty Tuesday morning on November 18, 1997, when Lisa Harrow, a 34-year-old USPS mail carrier, left the Davenport post office. Just after 7 a.m. She had worked the same suburban route for over 6 years and was well liked in the community for her punctuality, kindness, and attention to detail. That morning, like every other, she loaded her truck with bins of letters and small parcels, thermos in hand, and radio playing her favorite oldies station. By all accounts, it was an ordinary day. But by noon, something wasn't right. Lisa had failed to deliver mail to 3 neighborhoods on her scheduled route, something she had never done before. A concerned homeowner called the post office around 1:30 p.m., saying that their mailbox was still empty and Lisa hadn't been by, even though she was usually there by mid-morning. The supervisor initially assumed Lisa had mechanical trouble, so they dispatched another driver to check her route, but what they found was far more unsettling than a broken-down truck. Her USPS delivery van was parked halfway on the curb near the edge of Canal Street, a less busy stretch of road lined with old warehouses and low-traffic businesses. The engine was still warm. The passenger door was shut, but the driver's door stood wide open, flapping slightly in the wind. Inside, her thermos sat in the Q folder. Her jacket was still on the seat. A stack of undelivered mail lay in the passenger tray, but Lisa was nowhere to be seen. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, no scuff marks on the pavement. The area wasn't known for violent crime, but it was isolated enough that if something happened, no one would have seen it. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings yielded nothing useful. One old security camera faced the canal but had been non-functional for years. The last person to see Lisa was a bakery owner on Elm Street around 10:40 a.m. She had waved to him from inside the truck. She was smiling. That was the last confirmed sighting of Lisa Harrow. As dusk fell, investigators cordoned off the area and began a ground search. They assumed she may have wandered off in distress, possibly injured or disoriented. But hours turned into days, and Lisa left behind no digital footprint, no phone calls, no bank activity. Her purse was later found, still locked in her locker, at the post office. She had never intended to disappear. Something or someone had taken her off that route, and into silence. In the days following Lisa Harrow's disappearance, the atmosphere in Davenport shifted from confusion to dread. Friends, co-workers, and neighbors initially clung to the hope that Lisa had simply gotten lost or suffered a medical emergency. But as day 3 passed with no phone calls, no sightings, and no ransom demands, that hope slowly curdled into fear. Posters with her smiling face were taped to every stop sign and storefront in the city. Missing USPS driver last seen en route became the headline, plastered across every local paper and nightly broadcast. The investigation quickly expanded. By the end of the week, the FBI had been called in, citing the federal connection to her role as a government employee. Agents reviewed hours of Lisa's delivery route, questioned dozens of residents, and analyzed the contents of her mailbag. One package was found partially opened, addressed to an apartment near the canal. But the resident claimed they never received it. The FBI began to suspect foul play, but with no physical evidence, they couldn't build a profile. What they did find, however, was a troubling detail. Lisa had filed a quiet report 2 weeks earlier about someone following her on her route. The report had gone largely unnoticed at the time. Lisa had mentioned it in passing to a supervisor, saying a man in a green sedan had been parked in different spots along her delivery path for several consecutive days. She said he never got out of the car, but she remembered feeling watched, even followed. She never saw him approach her or say anything. The supervisor had advised her to be cautious, but there had been no follow-up. Now, that unconfirmed sighting became the cornerstone of a growing theory. Lisa hadn't disappeared, she'd been taken. Meanwhile, her family was falling apart. Lisa's younger sister, Megan, appeared on the local news, pleading for her safe return. Her parents, both retired school teachers, stood behind her, visibly shaken and barely able to speak. Candlelight vigils were held at the local park. Volunteers scoured the woods, ditches, and abandoned buildings around Canal Street. Police dogs were brought in, but the trail seemed to vanish just a few feet from where Lisa's truck had been. Found it was as if she had stepped off the face of the earth, or had been pulled beneath it. Then came the first strange phone call. Late one night, Lisa's coworker, Emma, received a call from a blocked number. A raspy male voice simply said, "She should have stayed off the canal." Then silence. Investigators traced the number, but it led nowhere. The caller had used a prepaid phone that was never activated again. To some, it sounded like a sick prank, but to others, especially those who knew about the green sedan, it felt like a warning, a sign that whoever had taken Lisa was still watching and didn't want to be found. 3 months after Lisa vanished, just as the case was beginning to fade from headlines, something terrifying happened. On the night of February 8, 1998, at exactly 2:17 a.m., Lisa's younger sister, Megan, was awakened by the sound of her landline ringing. Still half asleep, she reached for the phone, expecting a wrong number. But when she answered, there was no voice, only static, crackling, and a faint high-pitched hum in the background. Then, just as she was about to hang up, a woman's voice broke through. It was weak, barely audible, but unmistakably familiar. The message lasted exactly 17 seconds. The woman was crying, not screaming, but quietly sobbing, as if she were trying not to be heard. In between gasps, a phrase repeated twice, "I see the water. It's rising. It's rising." Then there was a loud splash, followed by a low gurgling noise, and finally, sharp white noise that seemed to surge like a wave crashing through the line. Megan froze, phone still pressed to her ear even after it went dead. Her hands were trembling. She knew the voice. It was Lisa. Investigators retrieved the recording from Megan's answering machine. Forensics confirmed the audio had not come from a standard cell tower or landline. It was most likely from a spoofed or scrambled device, the origin of which could not be traced. Audio analysts attempted to enhance the background noise and isolate any identifying elements. The results were disturbing. One expert claimed to hear metal clanking, consistent with a large industrial pipe or drainage tunnel. And another believed they heard a distant man's voice, though it was so warped and faint, they couldn't confirm what was said. The voicemail ignited public frenzy. Local papers dubbed it the cry from the canal. News outlets ran segments speculating whether Lisa had been alive this whole time, trapped somewhere, trying to reach out. But if she had access to a phone, why hadn't she called the police? Why hadn't she said her name? Some believed it wasn't Lisa at all, that it was a hoax, meant to taunt the family. But Megan insisted she had grown up with Lisa. They had home videos, old voicemails, birthday recordings. She knew that voice. No one could imitate the quiet fear in it. The FBI, growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of leads, began cross-referencing the timestamp of the call with any security footage or phone activity in the region. Nothing came up. The call was a ghost reel but without origin. Weeks passed with no further communication. But Megan couldn't let it go. Every night for a year, she left her landline next to her pillow, volume maxed out, waiting for the voice to return. But the phone never rang again. The message had come once, like a warning, or a final goodbye from somewhere deep beneath the city. By the time the one-year anniversary of Lisa Harrow's disappearance passed, Davenport had changed, not in obvious ways, but in whispers, in glances. In the way people walked faster past Canal Street after sunset. What had started as a high-profile missing persons case began to take on something darker, more spectral. People didn't just say Lisa was missing anymore. They said she was still out there, caught between the world of the living and the dead, watching, waiting. Her story had bled from news headlines into the realm of urban legend. Children, especially, kept the story alive. They played twisted games around the canal. Mail carrier ghost, they called it. The rules were simple. Go down to the canal after dark. Knock on one of the old metal pipes 3 times, and whisper, "Lisa, are you there?" Some swore that if you listened closely after the 3rd knock, you'd hear a woman sobbing through the rusted grates. A few even claimed to hear a voice whispering back, "I see the water." Teachers dismissed it as childish nonsense, but parents started forbidding their kids from going near the canal altogether. Then came the fisherman's story. Henry Lawton, a retired factory worker, who often fished alone near the edge of the canal, claimed that in the spring of 2001, nearly 4 years after Lisa vanished, he had seen something that chilled him to his core. Just before dawn, while preparing his line, he spotted a half-submerged mailbag floating silently downstream. It bobbed against the current, tangled in debris, the red, white, blue USPS logo still visible beneath layers of slime. As he moved to grab it with his pole, a sudden, powerful gurgling whirlpool pulled the bag under, and it never resurfaced. That wasn't river current, Henry told a local reporter. That was something pulling it down. But when police returned to the site, they found nothing. No bag, no evidence. just the slow-moving murky canal water, and the sound of wind rattling the chain-link fences. Henry's story was dismissed by authorities, but in the court of public opinion, it spread like wildfire. A growing number of residents believed that the canal itself had become cursed, haunted not just by Lisa's death, but by the secret someone had tried to bury deep beneath its surface. It wasn't long before local businesses near Canal Street reported employees quitting without notice, claiming they felt watched while locking up at night. Even Lisa's old delivery route gained an ominous reputation. A few new postal workers refused to cover it, citing engine stalls, flat tires, and strange figures spotted near the loading zones. One temp even reported finding a single wet envelope sealed in her tray one morning, addressed to Lisa Harrow herself, but with no return address, and the inside completely blank. Whether it was a prank or something more sinister, no one could say, but the legends continued to grow. Lisa wasn't just a missing person anymore. She had become a phantom in the city's memory, forever tied to the black water of the canal. By the time 2002 rolled around, most people had moved on. Lisa Harrow's disappearance had become just another cold case, filed away, unsolved, and growing colder with every passing winter. But inside City Hall, among janitors, clerks, and maintenance workers, quiet rumors still circulated. Some said that certain officials had stopped answering questions about the canal, even in casual conversation. Others noticed that old engineering files related to the drainage system had suddenly been locked behind restricted access. No one had any proof of foul play, just a sense that someone knew something, and had known it for years. Then, one rainy afternoon in October 2002, a city janitor named Eli Carson was performing his usual cleaning rounds in the lower levels of City Hall. As he swept near the archive storage room, he noticed a folded slip of paper wedged beneath the door. It looked fresh, completely dry, and unlike the usual clutter he swept up. Curious, he opened it. The note was handwritten in black ink, the letters shaky but intentional. It read, "Drain the canal before the anniversary. She's still down there. Check the pipe gate." There was no signature, no date, just that chilling message. Eli initially thought it was a prank, maybe a leftover piece of fiction from someone who had watched one too many true crime documentaries. But something about the phrasing made his skin crawl. Before the anniversary, was it referring to Lisa's disappearance? He reported the note to his supervisor, who reluctantly passed it along to local authorities. A detective scanned it and placed it in evidence, but no public action was taken. There were no press releases, no follow-ups. A week later, Eli was told the note was likely a hoax and not to discuss it further. But just a month later, something far more serious happened. A fire broke out at the Davenport water treatment facility, less than half a mile from where Lisa's van had been found. 5 years earlier, surveillance showed a shadowy figure tossing a Molotov cocktail through a maintenance door around 3 a.m. The flames damaged critical pumping equipment and temporarily shut down the water filtration system, forcing the city to divert attention and budget toward emergency repairs. The investigation into the arson stalled. No one was caught, but to a few quiet officials in City Hall, the timing felt far too coincidental. Forced into action, the city announced in early 2003 that it would begin a comprehensive overhaul of the canal infrastructure. Citing aging pipes and outdated drainage systems, the public believed it was just routine maintenance, long overdue. But behind closed doors, a handful of engineers and planners were instructed to focus on a specific area of the canal, the southern pipe gate, an old iron structure that regulated water flow from the inner city into the lower basin. It hadn't been inspected in decades. The workers weren't told why it mattered, but one cryptic directive stood out in their project brief. Document everything, don't speak to media. No unsupervised access beyond Gate 3. In March of 2004, after nearly a year of preparation and silence from city officials, the long-awaited canal drainage project began. The public saw it as part of a larger urban revitalization plan, an effort to clean up Davenport's aging infrastructure and beautify the blighted areas surrounding Canal Street. But for a few city workers and law enforcement officials, it was something far more delicate, more urgent. Quiet orders were passed down to limit media access, fence off the southern sector, and ensure all findings were logged, even the unexpected ones. The drainage itself took over a week. Massive pumps were brought in to siphon off tens of thousands of gallons of cold, black water from the canal's southern end. As the water receded, what emerged shocked even the most experienced workers. Decades of rot and rust, sunken bicycles, mangled shopping carts, animal bones, and something that looked like a large metal container near the eastern pipe gate. At first glance, it was assumed to be an old dumpster or storage crate that had been dumped illegally, but as the muck cleared and the sunlight hit its corroded edges, someone spotted the faded blue and white paint beneath the grime, a red eagle logo, and then a number. It was a USPS delivery truck. Panic set in. Law enforcement rushed in to cordon off the area. Cameras were immediately confiscated. Forensics units were called to the scene, and over the next 48 hours, what they found inside the vehicle confirmed the darkest fears of everyone who had followed Lisa Harrow's story. The driver's door was still jammed shut. The interior was rusted through. But the skeletal remains of a woman sat strapped into the driver's seat, her spine slumped sideways, one hand resting near the floorboard. On her lap sat a USPS satchel, still partially intact, and clutched between the bones of her other hand was a silver locket. Investigators would later confirm that the locket was engraved with the initials LH, and inside it, preserved behind glass, was a tiny photo, Lisa and her sister Megan as children, smiling in a field of sunflowers. The truck showed no signs of collision, no visible structural damage to the frame, and most importantly, no indication that it had entered the water with speed or force. Instead, the tires were caked in a thick layer of algae and silt, leading experts to believe it had been rolled slowly and deliberately into the canal, possibly under cover of night. Whoever had done it had wanted the truck to sink silently and stay hidden. But even more disturbing than the discovery itself were the questions it raised. The canal at that depth would have filled the truck in minutes, but the seatbelt had still been fastened. Forensic pathologists couldn't determine the exact cause of death due to decomposition, but they did note one chilling detail. The bones showed no evidence of trauma, no breaks, no fractures. It was as if Lisa had simply sat there, conscious, restrained, as the water rose around her. The same words echoed in her sister's mind, again and again. "I see the water, it's rising." When the remains of Lisa Harrow were officially identified in April 2004, the announcement was met with a strange silence across Davenport. Not relief, not closure, just a lingering sense of something left unfinished, or worse, deliberately buried. The authorities released a brief statement declaring the cause of death consistent with drowning, and listed the manner as undetermined. They claimed there was no evidence of foul play, no definitive injuries, and no proof that anyone else was involved. For many, that single word, undetermined, felt like a deliberate evasion. A final quiet cover-up wrapped in bureaucracy. Megan Harrow didn't buy it. She stood outside the courthouse the next morning holding a copy of the coroner's report and addressed a cluster of reporters directly. "My sister didn't fall in. She didn't get lost. Someone put her there. And now they want to pretend they don't know how." Her words hit hard, and her emotion was raw. But despite her pleas, the case remained closed. Officials stated they had exhausted all leads, that there was simply nothing more to investigate. The locket, the voicemail, the mailbag, all seen as anecdotal, not actionable, just noise, just coincidence. But those who had followed the case closely, journalists, amateur sleuths, even a few retired detectives, couldn't shake the inconsistencies. Why had Lisa's seatbelt been fastened? Why had no window been broken? Why did the truck sink in a way that suggested it had been guided, not crashed? And what about the anonymous note in City Hall? The one that said, "Check the pipe gate." That tip had led directly to her discovery. Yet the city refused to discuss it further, labeling the memo not relevant to the cause of death. It was as if they were afraid of where the truth might lead. One retired police officer, speaking under the condition of anonymity, admitted something even more unsettling. He claimed that during the canal drainage, investigators found evidence of tampering near the old pipe gate, specifically a broken lock on a hatch that hadn't been opened in decades, and a set of rusted chains buried beneath the mud. The chains had scratches on them, as if something heavy had been dragged across. But these details were never included in the official report. They buried that too, the officer said. Not just her body. The whole damn truth. His theory. Lisa had been alive when she was placed in that truck. As the years passed, the mystery of Lisa Harrow transformed into something larger than a single case. It became a symbol of systems that fail the innocent, of voices that go unheard, and of how some secrets are too dark to confront. The voicemail remained in Megan's possession, burned onto a CD she kept in a small locked box. Every so often, she'd play it again, late at night, and listen to the faint whisper at the end, just before the splash. a barely audible phrase that even the FBI couldn't decipher. Some believed it was a name, others thought it was a location. Megan believed it was a warning, one that no one had understood in time. Today, the canal flows again, quiet, murky, and indifferent, as if nothing ever happened. There's no memorial for Lisa Harrow, no plaque, no marker along Canal Street to remind people that a woman vanished, died, and was hidden in plain sight for 7 long years. The case remains officially closed, boxed up in a dusty archive somewhere, labeled unresolved drowning, but the questions haven't gone away, not for her family, not for the people of Davenport, and not for anyone who's ever heard that 17-second voicemail and wondered what Lisa saw as the water rose around her. Was it fear? Was it betrayal? Or was it someone she knew, standing on the bank, watching? We may never know who put her in that truck, or why they went to such great lengths to silence her forever. But one thing is certain, the canal kept its secret. Until it couldn't anymore, and now that secret belongs to all of us.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.